teaching to obviously being an entrepreneur? Like, what kind of really weighed in on that decision to hold back?
My salary capped out at a certain number,
Right.
and I wasn't going any further. That's when I decided it wasn't worth my time anymore.
Why open like a golf simulator?
Real estate, find you the best rate. All throughout Philly, like Schuylkill Expressway. Talking to people who out of the 215, even the.
All right, everyone. I just want to welcome you guys all to the podcast. I'm John, the local real estate agent here in the greater Philadelphia area. I'm here with my boy, Jaeson.
Yeah, what's that?
We're here with Jaeson runs the indoor golf club, which is a very unique place here for people to have an experience with golf simulators. So, Jay, just for our audience and for our listeners, a little bit more about yourself, how you got into the business, and a little bit about your background for our listeners.
Well, I was a teacher at Abington Senior High School for 20 years. I taught math initially and then computer science and research at the end. It was sort of like a long journey, and towards after the pandemic or right around the pandemic is when I started to feel like I was, I wouldn't say wasting time because I was still teaching and enjoying kids, but I think it was like a poor use of my time in a way. I kind of felt like trapped in there a little bit. And the kids overall were sort of, they were great. I had a handful of great kids, but there's a few kids where it was just like, it would really grind my gears and I would get very frustrated day to day, and instead of being in a sort of like that toxic environment for me and not feeling happy or any more joy like teaching, I decided to get out of that sort of industry, and I switched over to the second love. I guess the first love of my life now is golf,
Right.
And so I wanted to have a place where I felt it was like clean and comfortable to practice, and meet new people, but at the same time be like open and accessible to the members that I have.
Yeah, I mean, and kind of going into that whole teaching environment, like, what do you think happened there? Do you think it was more so of kind of like the era of generational shifts of kids, or the lack of authority of the school district, or a combination of both? Like, what were you seeing like kind of made you break the was it camel's back or whatever, straw on the camel's back?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I think the administration, they sort of had their hands tied a little bit because like the parents rule a lot of districts, right? Like you have to be careful of what they're going to do and say if they're in the sue the school or whatever. So the administration could do the best that they can, but they're sort of tied up a little bit. They don't want to do a lot of discipline to kids because there's not like a lot of major like police offenses. Like obviously those kids are they're dealt with immediately, but it's kind of like just like discipline problems and stuff like that. It's hard to suspend kids because they want to keep numbers low. They don't want to have all these suspensions and all that.
Record of history of suspending kids.
Yeah. So it kind of puts teachers in a hard spot because it's these kids are being outright disrespectful, and to me they weren't really outright disrespectful to me. I had good kids and great classes, but so you can't really blame it on administration.
Right.
It kind of boils down to the kids not really caring, because during the pandemic they had the opportunity just to sit in front of their computers and listen to class but not have the camera on,
right?
And essentially they're just playing games, other websites or whatever,
right?
Because it's the middle school kids, when they were in school, they didn't care. If I were a kid at that point in time, I'd probably do the same thing, just sit around and do nothing. But it was that sort of lack of self-discipline and that sort of progress into not really caring about stuff in school, because they had a lot of opportunities to make up stuff. Because they're obviously trying to give leeway to the kids because it's a weird, unique situation.
Right.
But the kids sort of took full advantage of that and continued to do that. So the middle school kids during pandemic, my belief is that the middle school teachers do the most amount of work with these kinds of kids, because they're the middle school teachers are the crazy energetic ones. You have to be in order to survive in that environment. They love it. And without that sort of constant reinforcement from those teachers, these kids who were like sort of on the borderline of like not doing anything, not caring. Like a lot of them fell off deep, and so like it was really hard to recover those kids back into sort of normalcy. And so those kids made my life the most difficult because they had, the least amount of care, but then would complain about it later. Like, how come my grades so low? So, because you're not really paying
It's on
attention.
you.
Yeah, you're not paying attention, but I can't really, say that
Yeah.
out front. And it got to the point where I started like doing it, and I'm getting really like sort of like frustrated and mad. And like, and my career was never like that. It was like, I had a couple of kids here and there, but I could really sort of coach and guide them. But these kids were just not. They didn't care, and they're uncoachable. And then it's not all of them. There's a very small fraction in each class.
Right.
But they really caused me. That was a strong.
Yeah, I mean, a few bad apples can ruin a whole complete experience. And I mean, 20 years, that's a long time. So that's definitely an experience. So, I mean, would you say that was kind of the COVID time that really put a strain on you because of COVID? Was that, would you say that a big bulk of why, like?
I think so. And also just like, I got to the point where like, I felt like I could do more with my life a little bit. Not to say that teaching kids isn't like a great use of my time or anything like that, but like it got to the point where my salary capped out at a certain number.
Right.
And I wasn't going any further. I think actually that sort of triggered my first thing. That happened before COVID. I realized I hit a certain salary cap. And like, I have a lot of friends who were like making tons more than I was, like straight out of college. And I started like at $43,000 for my first year of teaching, but it didn't matter to me because I loved it so much. I cared. And once that love started to diminish and the pay wasn't sort of like, then that's when I decided it wasn't worth my time anymore. I started to really hate like the whole process of teaching at times, and it wasn't fulfilling anymore. And then if I wasn't going to do a good job with the kids, then it was time for me to back off and let somebody else do it.
Yeah.
Like, and I had thousands of kids that I've taught, and, a lot of them have done great things, and I still keep in touch with some of them on like Facebook and Instagram, stuff like that. And it's, it's really encouraging to hear, but I feel like, like my time has passed, and it's time for me to move on.
Yeah. I mean, Jay, like you and I are from like the same community. So I think you and I can also agree that like the people that we know that are teachers, they don't, they don't really like their jobs either. So I do feel like it's truly an underappreciated, career. Something that even for a lot of us, I think are starting to get concerned because like, I mean, what do you think the direction is going to be with teachers? Like, is that going to be kind of like, the new nursing type of position where it's going to be highly sought out, or high in demand? You know what I mean? Like, where do you think that's going to end up going now?
Yeah, unfortunately, like because of the pay and they're getting rid of pension and they're doing things that are like just not good for teachers, and they've kind of taken advantage of the fact that teachers like love what they do, and like also it's hard for them to move anywhere else, right? Because you're stuck in a job and you have
tenure.
You have a tenure, and if you go anywhere else, you get paid a lot less, and you might not get your years and insurance. There's all sorts of like ways to like kind of lock the teachers into where they are,
right? And
then they start getting really old and like, well, no, we're all getting old, but they get old and like grumpy, and we have all had that teacher where it's like they shouldn't be here anymore.
Yeah.
But they have to say that because like if they're an English teacher or something like that, where it's like. I have a lot of English teacher friends, and they're like, I don't know what I could do if I had left this, so it was just, and not only, I mean, like, any sort of teacher that has a how do I say it? So it's not just English teachers, but just most teachers in general, like, don't have an avenue out because they just don't know what else to do with it. So they've been a teacher for the whole entire life, like from college to back into the high school again. It's like,
all you know at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard for them to like figure out what else to do. So you're sort of locked in there because you're looking for your pension, and like that's sort of like the carrot at the end of the tunnel kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then like listening to like what's that guy's name? Like Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah.
So I think. So with Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Yeah.
Is that his name? I don't mean to butcher it or anything.
Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki, yep.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. And like, he was saying that people with pension sort of hold on to because that's what they think. But then if you can find something else that would, make I'm not all about financials, but if you can make more than whatever your pension is like promising and be happier for it instead of being locked into something that you hate, then that kind of resonated with me at the time. And I read that like maybe like 7, 8 years ago or something like that. It sort of like kind of stuck with me the whole entire time. And I was sticking with teaching because I liked it. I started to once that started to go away, then I was like, screw it, let's try something else.
Mm-hmm.
So
So yeah, I mean, tell me a little bit more about your general story. Like, obviously, you're running this, this golf simulator place, which is very unique in nature. It's not just like any golf simulator. Like, we can explain the details of it later, but it's open 24/7, so people can come in pretty much at any time. That's one thing that makes it really unique. But like the technology of it, which we can explain later as well. But before we get to that, like, tell me a little bit more about you, like, obviously becoming a teacher to kind of getting to this point where you eventually just said, "Hey, I'm going to make this decision to dive in and to start a business."
mm. I guess like there was nothing else that you could have told me to do when I started teaching, right? Like I just wanted to teach and help out young people and have them be, I guess, their best selves and to sort of like learn from my story. Because when I was in high school, I did really bad in high school, especially in math. Like I failed math my sophomore year of high school, and then decided to go teach math.
And just to let everyone, he is a math teacher, so
So like it was like one of those things where like it just made sense to me. Like I was in high school and I really didn't like math and I fell asleep and I was like, and I got into college. And there was a guy that I was sitting next to during the summer session of like math course that we're taking, and he was going into math education, and I never thought about it.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, like that's cool. That's what I want to do. And that was like a trigger, like that's what I'm going to do. And so that for like, a good 14, 15 years before I switched over to like computer science. And like, I was learning so much about like myself and math and also how to like help kids out and making sure they understood my story so like, they could have that positive, sort of like encouragement that they could do it too, because I wanted to make sure that they understood, like I struggled a lot in high school and in the beginning of college because there's so many math courses that like I brush up on, like all that math from like fifth grade on.
Right.
I had to sort of like relearn to get up to speed. I like that challenge to really force myself to figure stuff out. And I really like sort of diving in head first into things, like the swimming pool, I just jump in, or if it's like, like I went skydiving, I like that, or like anything that's like new and fun and relatively safe, like whatever, I'm all about it, you know what I mean? So, so then through that, like, I realized that like I might have been like in that sort of teaching position because it made sense to me to become a teacher. Like it was a trigger, and I was like, okay, yeah, I never thought about it. That's what it's going to be. And then through that experience, I felt like it was a learning process for me. It was a teaching process to get my mind to a certain level where I could start doing something else, because maybe I was like, immature, didn't have an identity, I don't know. And so like because my dad's a businessman and he's always sort of been entrepreneurial in so many different ways, like property. And I never had that sort of spirit. But I feel like, through teaching, getting leadership skills and understanding how I am and like, just all these sort of intricacies of like, dealing with like young kids the whole entire time. Sort of, I felt like it was a ramping up to something that was different. And so like, once this sort of came out, like, cause we started going to Scramble, which is over in Horsham, and, Justin's done a great job with it. I wanted to have something similar, but my own feel and style and flair, and have it be, just like the best that I could produce. And I feel like when I set my mind to things and I do things, they come out, nicely and thoughtful. And, I just want to make sure that, that it was from my sort of like mindset as to what I would enjoy. And so, once I sort of had that feeling where like teaching was no longer for me, that was when I was like, what, like, screw it. Let's just go for it. And having sort of that confidence in myself, knowing what I'm trying to make and the worth of it, what I'm trying to make, and like all these things, and again, it was sort of the accumulation of like learning who I was and whatever. Because like as a child, I was very sort of like shy and, I was very passive about things, you know what I mean? Versus like I have some friends who do really well, who are like aggressive and very like sort of like strong in that nature.
Yeah.
And so like learning from them, talking to them, and also learning about myself helped me sort of
Make that decision.
get into this. Get
Yeah.
into this area.
Yeah. No, there's so much that I can relate with you as well, Jay. Like, especially for me, like, my family and how even like when I was a lot younger growing up, same way, like just me trying to figure things out for my life and like where I wanted to be with like my career and everything. And just the same way I was like shy. I was really shy. But like just seeing this like develop and for you to take that, that plunge, I'm super encouraged and honored to interview you and to really talk about your success here. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, like what, like, like why open like a golf simulator? Like you probably could have done a lot more, right? You could open up like a different kind of business, or maybe something that maybe your parents might have done, or maybe someone that you knew that could have done. Why a golf simulator place?
Well, I mean, selfishly, one, I wanted to have this equipment because I think this equipment's top of the line, and like it's no knock on anything else that's around here because I know that this is the absolute best. And if selfishly, like buying one of these by myself would be just like unheard of.
Yeah.
And so, like for me, when I shot wedding photos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I did that predominantly because like I like taking photos and I like sort of capturing moments, but it was also because I wanted more and more camera gear, and camera gear is very expensive.
Yeah.
And that was sort of a nice way to like pay for that, like camera gear. And it's not like synonymous to this. Like obviously I love golf and I want this to be like a full-time thing. That wedding photography business was just like a couple of years, and I kind of got out of it because again I lost the passion for it, so I was like done. But I feel like golf is like a never-ending pursuit, and you're always super on fire for it, and you always want to play, and you always want to get better. So like I thought, you know what, if that's what I'm gonna find other people like that, and hopefully build a community where we can sort of like grow and gather and have fun and play, and sort of like talk to each other, relate. If you want to do business and stuff like that, that's cool too. But just sort of like that, have a community aspect, because that's what we sort of developed in school, having sort of communities within the community, and trying to my best relationships were the kids that I coached or that I had when I sponsored a class or whatever. Like those are the kids that I had the best relationships with. And, I realized that you need to sort of like garner that and make that.
Yeah. It's all about providing value, and there's so much value in this place. So just kind of briefly touching on the tech in this place, what sets apart this place as opposed to some of the other golf simulator places that are out there?
Well, I mean, the floors move, right? So it adjusts upon your lie. There's different surfaces, 5 different surfaces to hit off of. So you have sand and a rough and a fairway, and different levels of rough and sand. You have over 200 courses to play. You can play the network, so you can have 6 bays connected together, and you can play your own individual bay, and you can see other people. Their balls fly. I try to keep it as clean as I possibly can. I'm here vacuuming every single day. If equipment fails or breaks, I'm fixing it. Working with my hands. I clean toilets. So I do like anything and everything to make sure that this is like the best experience that I can make it. For the people that are members here.
Well, the other thing is you don't have to go pick up the ball. I realized other golf simulator places, when you hit the screen, you have to go up. And, it's okay. It's first world problem.
No. I mean, but I hate fetching a tee and a ball, and I can't find the ball that I was using. I can't find the tee.
Yeah,
like slide somewhere. You can't. Oh man, I hate that because you're constantly trying to go and come back. And also, we have a lot of video feedback too. So you see your swing every single time. You see the ball being hit by the golf club in slow motion every single time, in 2 different angles. Like there's just a lot of thought put into these systems to make it the best indoor simulation.
Yeah, and I would honestly say there are no other locations that have the technology that you have, that you're aware of, right?
Not yet. I mean, I think relatively soon they're going to be. I hear things like over by like H Mart, some guys maybe going to build one like up in Lancaster. I think some guys is preparing. So like, because the company tells me sort of opening, because I asked them like,
like where are they gonna open?
yeah, let me know so that whatever. But honestly, like the more the merrier for me at this point. I'd rather have a bunch of people sort of have facilities that they can kind of like meets their sort of needs.
Right.
But yeah, as of now, I'm going to sort of enjoy the uniqueness of it in this area.
Yeah.
And hopefully sort of like capitalize on what it is that I do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of places I feel like will have something like this, or you have an iPhone, or maybe like a MacBook Pro, but people don't really use it to like its fullest capability. But I've always been the proponent or a person that always like sort of tinkers and tweaks, figures things out. I'm okay with like things almost like messing things up because I'm comfortable with fixing it, and I'm comfortable with like pushing that edge as to what it can do. And so like as a teacher, I always did that as well. And my teacher friends would ask me like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And it's like, well, if I didn't know, I'll sit there and figure it out and tell them. Or like, I would have like different presentations and things for the district, like for the community to help them, figure the tech out. It's just, it's very easy for me to do because it's just, I enjoy, tinkering and messing around and breaking things and fixing things.
Right.
It's been in my nature to do so.
Yeah, I mean, changing gears a bit, like 8 years ago, you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. There was a certain mindset shift that you had. I'm going to ask you a funny question.
Yeah.
Why not earlier? Why didn't you make the decision earlier to make? Maybe they didn't have this technology 8 years ago, but from going from obviously teaching to obviously being an entrepreneur, like what kind of really weighed in on that decision to hold back?
Well, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, right? Like people were like, "Oh, build a Hagwon, like a
Secondary school,
like a after school,
Kumon type of thing."
Correct, after school, and do that kind of thing. But like I was like, I don't want to be in education anymore. Like I'm sure pay fine and whatever, but I just didn't want to do that. And you can open a store or whatever, but I don't know. I just think I was still enjoying teaching at the time too, and it was kind of like an easy life because having sort of like the summers off and like the pension down the line and all the different breaks and holidays and stuff like that. I just didn't think that I was still in that sort of transitional phase where like it was still good for me, So I didn't want to change, and then like it just sort of like so a lot of my major life changes is sort of just like. I click and I say, okay, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Okay. And so, it just kind of, this one took a while to sort of get there. Like teaching was just like that one time, like that class and everything. But like, other than that, like, I don't know. I try not to just like gamble too much, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that like, I kind of feel it out from all the sort of angles. And then like, once I'm like, sort of like 80% there, I just go. So, sometimes, maybe not even that much. My wife, man, she can tell you I've done like a lot of stupid things. Time and money.
I've seen it, dude.
Yeah.
I've seen a slingshot.
Yeah.
I've seen a Miata.
Yeah. Like a motorcycle.
I've seen a motorcycle.
And it's all on the teacher salary, right? Yeah. So like it's different. So who knows like if it becomes profitable, who knows what I'll be doing with. But like I but that's the other thing. I've also learned to like be so crazy with my money, you know what I mean? Like I'm really making sure that like family first and all kind of stuff. And if I have some spare, then like, and that's the thing that I'm really excited for, then yeah, sure, I'll do something, something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But I think at this point in my life, like I matured to the point where like I'm not spending all this money on getting a new car or like trading in the car, losing all this money and doing that dumb BS stuff. Yeah. Or like even gambling. I don't like gambling anymore. So like, I just think I needed to mature to the point where I was like, I wasn't going to blow any sort of like earnings on more stuff. Mm-hmm. I really want to put the money back into the business and, make it better and get more things and more amenities and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. I definitely don't want this just to be like a secondary thing in the back of my mind. Like I want it to be like the best that it can possibly be. So.
Yeah. It almost has to be. This is your livelihood. This is a business.
Yeah.
And you're treating it as such. And, a lot of times when people don't do that, that's kind of where, they get in trouble, especially with, something like this,
Yeah. I mean, in your business too, like if you're not on top of your game and learning new things and putting yourself out there, then you're just sort of like fizzling out and like, dying, right? And you
Yeah.
become like sort of irrelevant, or maybe you have repeat customers and that's about it. Like, like you have to sort of stay on top of your game, right? So,
Absolutely, all the time. And you have to definitely treat it as a business. And a lot of times when people take like something like this, because golf is technically a hobby, right? They kind of view the business. They view the business as a hobby as well, and I think that could be pretty tough. And
yeah.
same thing with like investing. Like I'll have a lot of people come up to me and say, "Hey, John, I want to buy or sell a house as an investment property," and I tell them like, if you're going to go up this alley, you have to make sure that you treat it as a business and not a hobby. So I'm definitely seeing that characteristic from you, and just like the facility itself being so nice. And obviously a lot of people in our community, like people who we know, obviously are supporting you. But for our listeners as well, Jay, where are you located? Where are you guys located? Where are you located?
We're at 555 Virginia Drive in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. We're in between Lifetime Fitness and LA Fitness, essentially. So easy to get to, right off the turnpike, less than a mile off the turnpike. We're near Manny's Manufacturers and Sandy Run Country Club, Lulu. Like they're all within like a couple miles of us. So.
Yeah. So location wise, again, Jay already thought that out. So I think it's a pretty central location for like the Montgomery kind of Bucks area a little bit. So come check it out. And for our listeners as well, where can they follow you or listen to you or?
Sure. If you go to indoorgolfclub.com, that's the website. Instagram is indoor.golf.club. So the other one was taken. I'm trying to get it, but the guy's like, he's like, that guy's not. He didn't even use it anymore. I think it was out of business.
Is he asking for an arm and leg?
No, I mean I would have paid for it like a little while ago. Now I can't because I gotta make sure that I'm keeping my budget. But I don't know. It just doesn't use it anymore. And then I guess those are my two main things.
Okay.
And then just give me a call and email me. All the information is on the website. So I'm more than willing to talk to anybody and sort of like figure out what it is they want to do.
You have teaching pros too, by the way, right? So lessons, if someone wanted to get lessons, obviously that can be provided.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I can obviously decipher numbers and things. The data that it gives you is immense. And so I could do that, but I could help people with like basic stuff, but like I don't feel like necessarily qualified to teach them anything like crazy. So that's why we have the pros here.
All right. Well, Jay, thanks for the time, brother.
Yeah, of course.
All right, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
John Lee Real Estate, found you the best rate. All throughout Philly like Schuylkill Expressway. Talking to people who out of the 215, even the 267, who always helping like, no time for no student.